Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 4 of Diehlman at Halftime, the NBA podcast that tops all others. I'm your host, Larry Diehlman. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome aboard, and if you've been a loyal listener, welcome back. We have much to get to today and not a lot of time to do it. We have 5 sections that we'll dive into, a general overview of the NBA this week, and our usual highlight, lowlight, random stat, and game of the week. Let's get to our content for the week. We learned last Monday, November 6th, that the 2025 NBA All-Star Game will be in San Francisco at Chase Center, home of the Golden State Warriors. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver confirmed the news. It will take place on Sunday, February 16th, 2025. Obviously, it's a little far ahead to think about, given that the 2024 All-Star Game is going to be in Indianapolis at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, home of the Pacers. But it's always nice to know what's coming in the future. If the NFL knows who will be hosting the next 3 Super Bowls, then why can't the NBA know some of the venues for the upcoming All-Star Games? Is it too early to ask where it'll be in 2026? Also, there's going to be a LeBron James Museum opening up in the future Hall of Famer's hometown of Akron, Ohio. The museum is called LeBron James's Home Court. According to ESPN, the museum is at House 330, a facility started by James's foundation to serve the community where he was raised. That was a quote verbatim. Some of the items on display will be James's all-white suit he wore at the 2003 NBA Draft and his jersey from the McDonald's All-American Game. The museum is set to open on Saturday, November 25th. This episode is entitled Here They Come. So, who's raising eyebrows at the moment? Wait, hold up. The Philadelphia 76ers are leading the Eastern Conference, and they beat the Boston Celtics? It's official, folks. Nick Nurse is the answer the Sixers have been waiting for. Philadelphia is 8-1 and looking down on the other teams in the East. Their only loss of the season thus far was their first game, which was a 1-point loss at Milwaukee. Coming off an MVP season that fizzled in the playoffs, Joel Embiid is back to scoring 30 points a game. Embiid is averaging 32.4 points, 11.7 rebounds, 5.7 assists, and 2.1 blocks per night. With James Harden out of the picture, Tyrese Maxey has stepped up tremendously. He's given the Sixers 28.6 points, 5.4 rebounds, and 7.2 assists per game. Are we witnessing an early nomination for Most Improved Player? And don't forget about role players like Tobias Harris, Kelly Oubre, and DeAnthony Melton. Unfortunately, though, the Sixers are going to be without Oubre for a while after he was struck by a car in Center City, Philadelphia over the weekend. But teams that think they can stop Embiid or Maxey and forget about the others are quite mistaken. As an unbiased is the key word there, Sixers fan, I've said that this team won't go anywhere unless Doc Rivers and James Harden were off the roster. I guess Daryl Morey had enough with those two. Philadelphia has a favorable schedule coming up with another home date with Boston on Wednesday, November 15th. That is this coming Wednesday. But the Sixers' next game will be at home on Tuesday, November 14th at 7 p.m. They'll host the Indiana Pacers as part of the in-season tournament. You may remember from the first episode where I said we'd have occasional guests on the podcast to get differing perspectives. Well, you're in luck because to get more insight into our highlight this week, we have our first ever guest on Diehlman at Halftime. Let's get into it. So for our first ever guest, Here on the Diehlman at Halftime podcast, we welcome Chris DiPietro. Welcome aboard, Chris. So, Chris was the reason I got into basketball, mainly because we used to play a good amount of NBA 2K over the years, and he just happens to be my cousin as well. Chris is currently a freshman at Rutgers University, New Brunswick. So, Chris, how are we doing today?
Doing good, doing good. Real humbled, real honored to be the first guest on the pod. But I think it's a greater honor just to be able to chop it up, talk some hoops with my highly talented cuz.
Oh,
So
thanks.
feeling blessed this afternoon, ready to get after it.
All right, good stuff. Thank you. And likewise. So, Chris, I wanted to get your thoughts on the Sixers since they are the highlight section for this week's episode and the 180 they've done from last year. So, how do you think the coaching change from Doc Rivers to Nick Nurse has helped the Sixers to start this season?
I think compared to previous years, Nurse just has this team playing a lot more intentional. He's put a structure in place that has heightened the tempo. You finally have guys working to get each other open. They're running in transition. Embiid and Maxey are moving the ball like we've never seen it before. I think they both have career highs in assists right now.
Yeah.
Um, Tobias Harris is showing some semblance of the guy that we paid a max contract years ago. Um, you get Kelly Oubre on a minimum deal, and he's putting up 20 a night for us. I mean, he's just turning this toxic era of Sixers basketball with little development, constant underperforming. So far, it seems like he's turning that on his head because this team's playing with more energy than we've ever seen, more cohesion, and the energy is high right now in his building compared to Doc's.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all that. Everybody playing a lot better on the Sixers right now. So Tyrese Maxey is on a tear to begin the 2023-24 season. Has this dominance by Maxey surprised you in a way, or have you always known, he has those skills in him?
Well, Maxey's always been super talented. I mean, he fell to 20 in the draft years ago, but I mean, out of Kentucky, he always had a ton of potential. He was projected to go, a lot higher than that in mock drafts. And he just has an elite quickness about him. His burst might be some of the best in the league right now. I think he's always been talented, but where he's really surprised me so far this season is in his playmaking. Like I said earlier, like a career high in assists and him being able to drive to the basket so easily. I mean, he's essentially a free paint touch every time down the floor, and he's able to kick it, and he's working the pick and roll with Embiid, better than we saw with James Harden last year. And I also think Harden's departure has, lifted, the weights off Maxey, and he's kind of finally being unleashed this year. And we're watching him turn into an all-star, all NBA player right before our eyes.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Harden because that's actually a good segue. So, what are your thoughts on the James Harden trade? Did you think it was time for him to leave?
You know, um, I think Sixers fans can relate where I could say my thoughts have been everywhere with James Harden because, it was always a game of, like what can we get back for him? Like who can we really deal him to? Who's going to take him? And also you had him showing up in the summer and then leaving in the summer. I mean, like I wanted it to work out with him because he is talented, and if it isn't for some terrible stretches last year in the playoffs, I mean, we might have made an Eastern Conference Finals with him. Now that he's gone, I think we're seeing what kind of burden he really did have on the team. And you see him in LA now. I mean, I don't think they've won a basketball game since he has
Nope.
been with the Clippers.
0-3, I
So,
believe.
yeah, so I mean, initially, yeah, I wanted it to smooth over because, I've always liked Nurse. I think he could make it work with Harden. But I mean, now that he is gone and we're seeing, like you talked about, the 180 this team has taken without him there, um, I just think it's been a pretty unreal last month for the Sixers.
Yeah, and then the part B to that question, were you rooting for the Harden Morey situation to smooth over? I mean, we saw all these reports saying, "Oh, the relationship between those two is over, fractured. Harden's never going to talk to Morey ever again. He went to China and told a crowd, 'Yeah, Morey's a liar, and I will never be part of a team he's with.'" So, were you kind of rooting for that to smooth over, or did you kind of get the feeling, "Yeah, it's over"?
I mean, I thought after the incident in China, I mean, like, as a Sixers fan, you're sitting there puzzled, like I don't know how this can mend. The reality at the time was we'd be getting scraps back in a potential James Harden trade, potentially having to even give up picks to offload his contract. So again, my thoughts have kind of been everywhere on this. I mean, I wanted it to mend when it looked like the Sixers were best positioned to go make a title run with James Harden playing for them. I wanted it to mend then. And now that Morey found a way to, kind of squeeze the most he could possibly get out of the Clippers in a Harden trade. And again, we are seeing the complete 180 this team has taken in his absence. The relationship has not mended at all since then. I think they both said that they will not be talking to each other. And sitting here on a November Sunday afternoon, I am happy that it is not mending, and I don't think it will.
Yeah, I don't think it will either, or at least not for years to come. And then to wrap up, so if the Sixers continue to play like this, what do you think the team's ceiling is? I know we've seen a lot of disappointing second round exits, most recently to the hated Boston Celtics. If you are in the Philly area, the Sixers had a 3-2 lead for once. They blew away a lead at the end of game six at home, and then game seven in the second half, Jason Tatum said, "It's my turn to shine." And that
Mm-hmm.
was the end of Doc Rivers and James Harden on the Sixers. So, what do you think is this team's ceiling, given Milwaukee has Damian Lillard and Boston is, well, Boston?
Well, like you said, I mean the past 4 or 5 years with the Sixers in contention, it's never ended pretty any of those years. But you said it right there at the end. I think Doc Rivers is off of this team. I think James Harden is off of this team. Nick Nurse has these guys playing like they've never played before. This is a different Sixers basketball team than in years past. I mean, the energy is just, I think, at its peak right now. Like this team was able to trade the assist leader, after a completely botched situation in the offseason between Morey and Harden. This team was in the dumps a month ago, and they have the best record in the NBA right now. They come off an emotional win against the Celtics, one that I think everyone wanted, and they're able to weather the storm in Detroit. I mean, this team is showing that they can win in all types of different ways. Even with the results in years past, even with the off season, this team is just standing on business right now, and they are playing like they've never played before. So, I mean, I think to say that they can't come out of the East, I think I think you'd really be undervaluing the Sixers team, how well they've been playing, and now that they have ammo even to go out and get another star if needed. These salary fillers we got back for Harden are playing at a great level right now off the bench. And with the draft capital, I mean, this team right now has the best record in the NBA, and they are absolutely positioned to go get someone like Zach LaVine or maybe a Laurie Markkinen or a third star, you know, if the season goes on, they decide they need a little more firepower. So right now, I think this Sixers team is in a great position, already being the best team in the league and having the ammo to go out and get someone if needed. So I think they can come out of the East.
Good points there. And unfortunately, at the timing of this episode, we learned yesterday, Saturday, that Kelly Oubre was struck by a car in Center City, Philadelphia, and will be out for a while as he recovers from that. So we hope he's okay. But
Yes,
I
sir.
think that will it'll test the Sixers off the bat. He was giving them 20 points off the bench this season. That's not easy production to replicate. So we'll see how Nick Nurse wants to fix that situation in the meantime. So, Chris, thank you for your input on our highlight this week. And if you'd like to follow
Of
Chris
course.
on social media, he is on Instagram. It's at Chris Dippy. It is ChrisDipi. And it'll
That's
also
it.
be in the description on this episode of Diehlman at Halftime.
Yes, sir. Humbled to be here. Humbled to be the first guest. Love chopping up with Larry.
Let's go to our low light for this week, the Detroit Pistons. Detroit basketball. If you're ever at a Detroit Pistons game, you might hear this call and response between the PA announcer and the fans. Please note, however, that Detroit is a cursed sports town. The Pistons are 2-9 on an 8-game losing streak and at the bottom of the league. I thought bringing in Monty Williams as the new head coach to replace Dwayne Casey was smart, but I guess it's going to be a slow adjustment period. Casey, by the way, is now in Detroit's front office. The Motor City has a nice group of young players like Cade Cunningham, Killian Hayes, and rookie Asar Thompson. Remember, his brother Amen plays for Houston. Thompson, Asar Thompson that is particularly impressive so far, averaging 11.2 points, 10.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.2 steals, and 1.8 blocks per game. Guys, he's 6'6" and a rookie. The thing that stands in Detroit's way is the fact that there are other teams in their conference with something they don't have. I got it. Elite talent. There's a difference between good talent and elite talent. If I'm Casey and the front office, I would dangle a few young guys in a trade for established veterans and or up-and-coming stars. Maybe the Motor City would see the playoffs sooner rather than later. The Pistons' next game is on Tuesday, November 14th at 7 o'clock. They will host the Atlanta Hawks as part of the in-season tournament. Let's go to our random stat. As of this episode, the NBA currently has 4 players averaging at least 30 points a night. Dallas Mavericks guard Luka Doncic, Philadelphia 76ers center Joel Embiid, Phoenix Suns forward Kevin Durant, and Golden State Warriors guard Stephen Curry. And if you look at the mean of the players' ages, the average comes out to 30.75 years old, rounded up to 31. If Doncic was just a little bit older, that number would be even higher. 2 of the 4 teams these players are on are in the top 5 of their respective conference. Golden State is on the fringe of the West's top 5. The true exception is Phoenix, since Devin Booker and Bradley Beal have gone in and out of the lineup with injuries. Embiid has been the NBA's scoring champion for the past 2 seasons, and he has a good shot at three-peating if he keeps averaging 32 points a night. Doncic and Kyrie Irving will always be lethal for Dallas, but Curry and Durant scoring this much at 35 years old each is incredible. Remember, Durant ruptured his Achilles tendon in 2019 while with the Warriors, and he's still scoring this good. The futures of the Mavericks, Sixers, Suns, and Warriors are bright as long as these guys keep doing what they're doing. Finally, let's go to Game of the Week. For this edition of Game of the Week, let's go with the San Antonio Spurs at Oklahoma City Thunder. This will be on Tuesday, November 14th at 7:30, and it's an in-season tournament game. Why is this my choice, you may ask? It's simple. Victor Wembanyama versus Chet Holmgren. These 2 big men should easily be the number 1 and 2 in the Rookie of the Year race this season. Remember, Holmgren would have been a rookie last year had he not been sidelined all last season with a Lisfranc injury. One thing Wembanyama and Holmgren have in common is the fact that they're very skinny for post players. I've seen the memes poking fun at how are they going to perform when they get bodied by Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, etc. You know you've seen them too. However, it should be a good battle. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander will make it tough on San Antonio's young team as well. I'm going to go with the Thunder 101-98. Well, that's all the time we have for today. If you haven't already, make sure to follow me on social media. I have 2 Twitter accounts and 2 Instagram accounts. The podcast accounts are under @Diehlman_NBA for both Twitter and Instagram. My personal Twitter is @LarryDiehlman18, and my personal Instagram is @Mr_Sports18. They're also in the description on SoundCloud. And thank you to Chris DiPietro for being our first guest on the podcast. Remember, you can follow him on Instagram @ChrisDippy. And don't forget to spread the word about Diehlman at halftime. See you next time, fellow Hoops fans.